Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too.
You need to have a plan to get the things done that are important to you. Getting in great shape doesn't happen by accident. Today I was watching the Chiefs game with my son and my dad, and my in-laws were in town, and my mom, my sister. We had a bunch of family over for celebrate my daughter's second birthday, my youngest daughter, and we're watching the football game, and it becomes very apparent the athletes on the field who are taking care of themselves, right? It doesn't happen by accident, right? They can't just show up on Sunday, or in this case Saturday, and expect to be great, right? Expect to feel good, expect their body to do the things that they want it to do, right? It takes planning, it takes preparation. And although, yes, that is their job to be in shape, that is their job to, put in the time in the gym, taking care of themselves, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy, right? It's still something that they have to commit to doing. And the same goes, for your workouts. You're not competing for a sporting event. Like maybe you play in, a rec softball league or basketball league or pickleball. Pickleball is very, very popular now. So maybe you're doing something like that. And if every single time you're playing, that's the only time you're exercising. That's the only time, you're preparing your body, or you're putting your body through, vigorous activity, then you can't really expect, the most out of yourself, right? If you're not putting in the work during the week. But even if you're not doing those things, even if, recreational activity, maybe a indoor soccer league or something is something that you like to do. If you're not doing those things, you still need to show up. You still need to be able to perform your best to just be a dad, right? Maybe you only have one kid, you've got a newborn. Being able to just get on the ground and be able to play with your kids, or just simply change a diaper, right? When we never had, when our kids were younger, we never had a changing table. And so I always changed, our kids on the floor, right? We had one of those mats that we rolled them out, right? And during that time, especially when my son was born, my oldest was born, I had a lot of back issues. And I still have some issues. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you've heard me talk about it a little bit, but I've had back pain since I was 16. Lots of reasons why, called kind of multiple reasons. I actually had a hip surgery done in May, and then I'm actually having a second hip surgery done here come January. But issues I've had for years, old injuries, and then the second one was kind of caused by the other. So long story, we don't need to get into that. But I know for me, just like being able to get on the floor and change my son's diaper when he was little, or just being able to bend over the crib and pick him up, caused a lot of pain for me. And so I realized pretty early on that I got to do something, right? I was young. We were young when we had kids, fairly young. And so I realized, this is already causing me issues now when they're getting older, when they're wanting to run around, when they're wanting to go to the park, when they're wanting me to, play catch with them. I don't want to be the dad who's sitting down on the bench, who's sitting down in a chair watching them play because, I'm in pain, or I physically can't do it because I didn't take care of myself. And so you may not be competing for a sport right now. You may not be competing for maybe an event, but you're training for life, right? You're training to be the best dad that you can be. And no, that doesn't mean you have to be able to run a 6-minute mile. That doesn't mean you have to be able to bench 300 pounds. It doesn't mean you have to be able to squat twice your body weight, right? There aren't any numbers that you have to do. But what you do need to be able to do is just be capable of just being present, right? Be capable of being the best that you can be, right? And so if you're right now, you're struggling, you're constantly in pain, you're constantly have to lay on a heating pad, you're taking Epsom salt baths and stuff like that. And I mention these things is because I have done all of these things, right? I have been the dad who hasn't been able to do things because I'm on crutches. I've been the dad who has had to watch my kids play at the park because I'm having nerve pain, or I'm having things like that. And it sucks. I'm to put it bluntly, like it really does suck. It's hard to watch, your kids doing things and not being with them. And I'm having a second surgery coming up here in about 3 weeks now, and I'm very excited for it. It's from an injury that I had initially when I was 12 years old. Never got better, caused lots of issues, and ended up having another surgery on the opposite hip. Hopefully, after this one, things are going to start getting better. They're already getting better. So, I'm very excited for this because it's something that I've been waiting for a very long time. I've gone as far as I can. I've been doing physical therapy for years. I've been doing rehab for years. I've been taking it. I'm knowledgeable enough. I've been, obviously I'm in this career field, personal training, kinesiology, working on one-on-one with clients. But I've kind of reached the point with my own, what I can do on my own without surgical measures. And so I'm very excited. But, it's going to cause me for a long time. This entire past summer, I had to watch my kids play. I wasn't able to run around with them, and that's tough. I had surgery in May, and that was hard. That was really hard just to be able to, just not be able to play with them and just sitting there watching them, watching other dads, play with their kids. And usually, that's me. I can remember very vividly a few years ago, I took my son to a trampoline park, and there were tons of dads just sitting there watching their kids. I was one of the only ones just jumping around on the trampoline, playing basketball at the trampoline park, all sorts of fun stuff. And I don't say that to, make it sound like, I'm better than you or I'm better than somebody else. I say that because I don't want to be that dad. I want to be the dad who's involved. It's fun to do things with them. And, I know once I have my second surgery, it's going to be very similar to my first one. I'm not going to be able to do it for a while. And that's a feeling I never want to feel again. And, if you're right now, your body is limiting you, maybe it's, your own doing, maybe it is an injury, maybe it's something out of your hands. But, right now, if you're somebody who is, quite a bit overweight and it's putting tons of pressure on your knees, it makes it very hard to move around. I know that's a tough position, right? That's something right now that probably, I know it doesn't feel good, right? I've been there for a short while, not due to weight issues, but due to, injuries due to being on crutches. And I've seen how hard, that can be. And I don't want that for you. And so taking care of yourself, just finding time to work out now. And maybe you're not there yet. And I hope you never have to go through that, right? Let's not just try and deal with the symptoms once they happen. Let's try and prevent the cause in the first place. And so we're gonna talk a little bit today about making time for your workouts. And so I said at the beginning of this episode is that getting in great shape doesn't happen by accident, right? We look at professional athletes; they didn't just wake up. Yes, they have a genetic advantage. Some people who are 6'5", they didn't do anything special when they were kids to become 6'5", right? But their work ethic has got them to where they are, right? One of my favorite quotes is, "Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard." And I don't know who originally said it, but I know Tim Tebow said that all the time, and I loved that. I used to have that going through my mind all the time. And so figuring out what how much time you realistically can spend on your workouts each week is going to be the first step, right? And so you may not have things may be harder for you. Okay, there's not a lot we can do with that, right? Some people, when they work out, they respond quicker, right? Some people, when they start losing weight, when they start, tracking their nutrition, tracking their diet and things like that, they respond a little quicker. There's not a lot we can do to that, right? There are genetic factors, but the genetic factors play a very small role in these things. And so we're going to control what we can control, right? For me, I'm 5'5". I'm not very tall. And so my brother-in-law, he's 6'3". He can eat a lot more food than me, right? I'm not very big. And so we can go out to eat, we can get the same meal. One's going to affect me more, right? He's going to be able to eat more than me because he's bigger than me. His body needs more calories than me. There's nothing I can do about that, right? I cannot make myself taller. And so I'm under those limitations, right? But I understand that. And once you come to terms with where you're at right now, we can move forward, right? You may not be where you want to be right now. You may be 20 pounds overweight. You may be 50 pounds overweight. You may be 100 pounds overweight. It doesn't matter where you are right now. Wherever you are, though, we have to come to terms with it before we can start taking action to move forward, right? You may feel bad because you haven't been working out consistently. That's okay. Come to terms with where you are. Are you able to work out 1 time a week right now? Are you able to work out 2 times a week right now? Are you not able to work out at all right now? And you just need to focus on a step goal. Doesn't matter where you are right now. The first step is finding how much time realistically you can spend on your workouts each week. Once we figure that out, we can start taking the necessary steps moving forward. And so then we're going to get a calendar, right? My favorite strategy to schedule your workouts is the Google Calendar. My wife and I, it took me a long time to get her on it. She likes, writing things down, and I understand that. When I'm taking notes and things like that, doing it by hand, I get much more out of it. My wife still writes everything down. She's got a planner. She'll put things on the fridge and stuff. Our kids have a calendar there. But then we take everything and we copy it over into the Google Calendar. The reason I do that is because the Google Calendar is with me everywhere we go, right? Whether, we're traveling, we're at home, we're at our kids' events, I can always just pop out my phone, the Google Calendar, I can see what's on there. And so I share all my work events with my wife. I share, I put all the kids, events in there, my wife's events. We put every single thing in there. So I know what she's doing. She knows what I'm doing, right? It makes it much easier to figure out when we're going to work out. And so those are the things that we're going to schedule first. And so we preview the first upcoming weeks. We put kids events. I get very detailed in this. I put when, I'm waking up. I put when I'm going to bed. I put when I'm putting my phone away. I put my lunch. I schedule every single thing I'm doing. I schedule time alone with my wife at night. And then I put my workouts in the calendar. And the reason I do that is because I want to guarantee, or I want to set myself up to almost guarantee that I'm not going to miss my workouts, right? Because if I want to work out at 4:00 on a Monday, but then, my kids have an event, my wife has, a meeting or something, maybe, one of them has an appointment or something, we can work around this, right? But if I know every single Monday at, 7 a.m., there's not a lot going on at 7 a.m., then I know for sure I'm probably going to get that workout in every single Monday. And so the biggest thing when it comes to your workouts is we want to try and get them at the same time each week. Doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same time, but the more consistent we can make it, the easier it's going to be to stick to. And so we're going to preview the upcoming 2 weeks, see what's going on there. Okay. So we're going to book a time. We're going to book a time for each day that we're going to figure out, when we're going to work out. So we're setting an appointment with ourselves to get it completed, just like a meeting, if you were having a meeting with your boss, you would do everything you can to make sure you're at that meeting, right? And you're going to do the same thing for your workouts. And sometimes that can be really hard for people. I made a post about this one day about, if you can schedule your workouts, just like meetings with your boss, like, you're going to be much more likely to complete that workout. And somebody replied on there and they said, well, if I got paid for my workouts, then there's a good chance I would work out more. And maybe that's true. And unfortunately, money is a factor, right? We value certain things. And for some people, money is the biggest, the biggest, thing that's going to decide, what we're actually going to do, right? If you're doing, you have two different options. You can either work really hard and just be rewarded internally or down the road, or you're going to get paid right away. A lot of people are going to choose that instant gratification. But when you're working out, when you're investing in yourself, and I use that word strategically, investing in yourself, because it is something that pays off long-term, right? When you invest in the stock market, you don't expect to make money overnight, right? You expect to make money long-term. And that's exactly what workouts are doing. One workout's not going to change your life. A week's long workout's probably not going to change your life. A month, a couple months, probably not going to change your life if you don't stick to it. But a year, 2 years, 3 years, all of a sudden this is going to add up, and you're going to start seeing the returns, and you're going to look back and be like, I can't believe I waited to start. Because just like in the stock market, compound interest, right? The longer you will let it accumulate, the bigger the payoff. And so set reminders, use your Google Calendar, like I mentioned, use Post-it notes, whatever it takes to keep yourself on track, right? For me, I had to do a lot of things. I put things in the calendar. I put reminders on that. I use Post-it notes. I have a mirror that I write notes on. When the more we can be reminded, a lot of times when it comes to information, we don't need new information all the time. We just need reminders. But we need reminders in lots of areas of our life, right? There's lots of things, and I used to be under the impression that if something was important to you, you'd remember. And I remember there's a business coach who runs a very very select group with a very high earners, that he talked about just going on these walks where you don't have your phone, you don't have anything with you, and this is kind of where good ideas come to you and stuff. And I found the same to be true when I go on these walks without electronics. I've the ideas start flowing and stuff like that, and it's very freeing. But he had always talked about, he said that if the idea is good enough, or if it's a great idea, something you should act on, you'll remember it. And I've kind of found the opposite to be true. I know for me personally, at one point I bought a little pocket recorder, and now I just use either the recorder on my phone or the notes app. But if I have a great idea for something that pops in my head, I put it in my phone, I put it in my notes app, and I have them. I call them light bulbs. I put them in my phone, and I just write all of them down, right? Because there's a lot of times where I'm thinking man, I have these really great ideas. This is what I'm going to do. And then I come home, the kids, might be needing something. They're excited to see me. They want to play around, we doing something together. I'm having dinner with my wife, doing all these things. And then I completely forget what I was even, planning on doing later on. And then all of a sudden the whole evening's gone. And so I need reminders, and you may be somebody who needs a reminder too. And so, use the Google Calendar. Set an alarm in your phone for when you're going to work out, when you're going to start working out, when you're going to go put your gym clothes on, things like that. If you need Post-it notes, if you need someone to help you, right? So I have clients of mine who literally ask me just to set a reminder, to just send them a text hey, did you get your workout in, or and that's all they need. And a lot of times, when I text them, they're already working out. Just having that external accountability can be really helpful. And so the bottom line is when it comes time to do your workout, keep the promises you make to yourself, right? If you can keep the promises you make to yourself, you're going to have no problem executing moving forward. That's the number one thing in all of this, right? And so can you are you someone that can trust yourself? And that's a tough question, right? Of course, you'd be we like to think a little highly of ourselves sometimes, right? If somebody, we think about, there's this old analogy when we see people you see somebody slip on the ice, we think, oh, they should have been more careful, right? But when we're the ones that slip on the ice, we think, oh, that no one could have avoided it. There's nothing I can do there, right? We like to sometimes we don't hold ourselves to the same standards, but if we can keep the promises we make to ourselves, our life tends to go in the direction we want it to. And so right now, how do you begin? Start where you are. If you're at no workouts, don't expect yourself to work out 5 days a week this week. Don't expect yourself to do a program that's asking you to work out every single day, right? If you can only work out twice a week right now to start, that's okay. Schedule your workouts in a time where for certain you can get it done. So we already talked about this a little bit, right? And so, if you hate mornings, you're just not a morning person. It's probably best not to schedule them at 5 a.m. right away, right? Maybe someday you're going to be a morning person. Maybe someday you're going to wake up, and that's when the best time to work out. But if right now you're not a morning person, you don't work out, and you schedule your workouts first thing in the morning, there's a lot of resistance already at play there, right? If you're somebody who from 8 to 11 o'clock at night, I have time, I'm watching Netflix, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and you're more of a night owl, and you have that time in your schedule to work out, that's probably the time you should start doing it right now. Something or someone will always try and take your time away. So we got to have a plan there, right? If you've got kids, if you've got young kids, there's a good chance, they're going to wake up at night. They're not going to go to sleep right away. And so maybe right after the kids go to bed might not be the best time. Maybe they sleep for an hour after you put them down, and then they wake up, and then they have trouble getting back to sleep. So maybe right after, you put them down to sleep, you got to work with your wife there. Ask her, can she, kind of be on duty for an hour so you can get your workout in, right? And the same thing goes, something we haven't really talked about yet, but when you're scheduling your workouts, make sure you're scheduling your wife's workouts too. And so they're just as important as yours. And so find time in your calendar to not only schedule hers, but yours as well. If your kids are able, if they're a little older or they sleep really well and you guys are able to work out from home together at the same time, awesome. Now you got an accountability partner, right? Now you got somebody who's going to be doing it with you. Kids go to bed, we work out together, then we get showered, ready for bed, we relax, right? And so if that's not ideal, right? Do you need someone to watch your kids? Maybe right now you can only work out on Saturdays and Sundays. Do you have in-laws close to you? Do you have family members, right? Or again, are your kids old enough where they can, be trusted alone for an hour or so, right? So figure out if you need someone to watch your kids, right? Make sure, we already kind of touched on it, but make sure, your wife's events, your kids' events are already on the calendar before you schedule your workouts. And I can't stress this enough, right? Because one of the most frustrating things is when you're trying to work out, you're trying to be consistent, you're trying, to make better choices, but things always interrupt them, right? Things always pop up, and that can become very, very frustrating, right? And so let's figure out a time that's going to work for you. Now, if you schedule a workout, you didn't complete it, no problem. Figure out, what got you off track, learn from it, and just do better tomorrow. This is kind of an advanced tactic here, but it may work for your schedule. It may work for not. I used to teach this principle a lot, and I still share it with some people who it can be helpful for. But what I used to do is when I was working out 3 days a week, I still work out, 3-4 days a week. My schedule, I'm mainly working from home most of the time now, doing a few different. I still have some in-person clients, but not a whole lot right now. So the majority of my work is done from home. So I have that luxury, and I know that, right? But if you're not working from home, then obviously you're going to have less opportunities, right, to kind of shift some things around. But one of the things that can be really helpful is if you're planning on working out 3 days a week, instead of scheduling 3 workouts, what you can do is you can actually schedule 6. Now, you're not going to do 6 workouts. You're still only going to do 3, but let's say you schedule a time on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we've got 6 time slots there to get workouts in. Now, like I said, you're not getting 6 workouts in, you're still scheduling 3. And so if we get that Monday workout in, and then Tuesday comes along, we have another one on Wednesday. We can't do the one on Wednesday, so we just move it to the next time slot. So then we shift that over to the time slot that was available on Thursday. So this week we worked out Monday, Thursday, and Friday, right? Now, if you wanted to take a day off between those workouts there, you could shift that Friday one to Saturday. This can be very helpful for a lot of people because it takes the pressure off of, I missed my workout. Now I'm going to have to find a time to make it up. But you've already made it that time because you've already put it in your calendar. And in that second time slot, let's say you get your Monday workout in. Now you've got your one workout in complete for the week already. Tuesday comes along. You still have that scheduled workout time in. You can either maybe do some cardio or something. You could, do a different kind of workout, do some stretching, or just have that time for you time, right? And so now you have some options, right? The issue where it comes along is if at the beginning of the week, if you're not front loading them, so front loading, I say I try and get as many things in at the beginning of the week and the beginning of the day as I can, because the longer the week goes and the longer days go, our willpower kind of depletes. We're tired. We've been working all day and we've been working all week, and it makes it harder to want to do the things we know we should do. And so can we front load our days? Can we get the workouts in earlier? Can we get the workouts in at the beginning of the week? Because if you scheduled a workout Monday, couldn't get it in, you couldn't fill in the Tuesday slot, a meeting got scheduled. Wednesday's a little iffy. Now we're Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're trying to get 3 workouts in there. It gets a little stressful. And so I like to front load my weeks. I try not to work out on Sundays, but there are some weeks where I know Monday's just going to be super busy. And so I will just take that Monday workout and I shift it back to Sunday. And I get a workout in on Sunday, and then I've got my workout in. I'll get one in Tuesday. I'll get one in Thursday, Friday. If I'm not busy that next weekend, maybe I'll get one in on Saturday. And so you have some flexibility in there. And so I do encourage you to schedule more times than you actually need to get your workouts in, because then you do have some room to kind of play around with there. And so that's kind of an advanced tactic there, but it's something that you may be like, hey, maybe this is what I've been missing. I've been missing that Monday workout a lot, and then I've only been getting my Wednesday workout in, and then I shift my Friday to Saturday, and it kind of throws me off because I feel like I'm missing it. So maybe this strategy will work for you. But no matter where you are, the most important thing is that we're scheduling those workouts, right? We're being intentional, right? If we're just leaving it up to chance, there's a good chance that it's not going to get done. And so you got to find something that's not only going to work for you, but that's going to work for your family too, right? If you're doing workouts, that just cut into dinner time, obviously that's not what we want, right? I want you to enjoy dinner with your family. You work really hard. Being a dad is the best job in the world, right? And so we want to be there for the moments that matter. And so you don't have to work out at 5 a.m. You don't have to work out at 6 a.m. But sometimes, that's what we have to do as dad. We have to sacrifice a little bit so the rest of the family, can benefit from it, right? When we're taking care of ourselves, when we're trying to be the best dads we can be, it doesn't just affect us personally, it's going to affect our entire family. And so sometimes that does mean, having to get up a little bit early. But with your work schedule, I don't know your work schedule. And so maybe that is a little different. Maybe you have a gym at work that you can work out over lunch. Maybe you have a gym in close proximity to the office, and so you can work out, shortly after work and then come home for dinner. But whatever you do, it needs to work for you and your family. And so get yourself a calendar, put everything on there, schedule your workouts, and get them done this week.
That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear from you.